How's it going, Chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. This is an excerpt from the Chase the Craft podcast with Matt Drew, who is a professional maltster. In this little clip, we're talking about how to get your hands on some raw barley so you can try malting at home as well. Don't forget you can catch the full podcast at chasethecraft.com or on any of your favorite podcatchers.
Where were we? So finding finding something that someone can malt at home, and where do you get it? So an unmalted, ready to malt barley. Where do people find that?
Yeah, so you go to your homebrew shop, and I would specifically, if you can't get a certificate of analysis on that grain, then I would look for something else, because you want to have a really good understanding of what you're starting with, and you can't just take the name of it at face value. I mean, you really have to have a better understanding, because here's the other thing too. What a lot of the bigger malt houses do is they'll blend. They'll take different barleys and malt them to different specs and then kind of blend them together at the end of that. It's not
to get a certain color or whatever.
It's like taking it back to coffee. It's like what Starbucks does. You know, when you get the breakfast blend, the Starbucks breakfast blend, the beans in those bags, you can hold two bags up to each other. They'll taste exactly the same, but the beans came from completely different geographical areas. Yeah. But that's why they do it. They blend them in order to hit a spec. And so that's what a lot of the places do. But they'll get that grain analyzed. They'll get that malt analyzed. And then typically you'll be able to get a COA on that grain. And the most important thing that you're going to look at there is, obviously your protein. That's the number one thing.
So do a lot of homebrew stores in America hold unmalted barley?
Some of them do. But here's actually this is a good point. I don't really know what they do in other countries. Like, I don't know in like New Zealand, how easy is it to find barley?
Oh, malted barley's everywhere. Homebrew stores, like the homebrewing culture is pretty good here, but I don't know about unmalted barley.
Yeah.
And so is that what you would call it? If you walked into a homebrew store, would you say, I want to malt my own barley. What unmalted barley have you got? Is that what you would ask for?
Yeah, I'd ask for raw barley. And here's the thing is that a good homebrew store, like for example, like a Montana Craft Malt, we're working on developing relationships with homebrew shops, not only just to be a distribution point for a malt for homebrewers, but also to let them know, like, if anybody wants grain, they just want raw grain, we can do that too. I think that's becoming more of a thing. But that said, it just depends on where you are and what you have access to.
Of course.
I'll be honest with you. I'm going to look right now as we're talking. I'm going to go on Amazon and see. Now that we're talking about it, like, well, wait a second, can you get it on Amazon? Because if you can, man, that is
well, at least that's accessible for everyone in America, right? If you can get it on Amazon, then if you're in America, I guess maybe not the very tippy top or Hawaii. A lot of the people that are going to actually try this, it's not about creating something amazing. They're not 100% dialed into worrying about having the perfect grain to start with. They're just interested in the process, right? They just want to be able to do it themselves. They want to be able to experience it. So even finding like feed barley, like a giant 25 grain sack of,
and actually that would even be better, because grain feed is going to be higher protein content. So from that perspective, it's going to offer you more in terms of diastatic power and enzyme potential. But at the same time, you got to understand going into it that it's going to be a little bit difficult to malt. And you're going to need to probably let it spend a little bit more time in steep.
What I'm thinking here is it's probably going to be easier for people, especially in weird places not weird places, but places that don't have access to great homebrew stores. That's probably an easier route to go. Mm-hmm. You're going to want to check the back of that bag though, because a lot of feed in New Zealand, that's not so much of a problem. In New Zealand, if people are going to feed something to a cow, they generally just give it barley. And that's what's in the bag much more so than in America, where I guess people that are supplying feed want to put IP economy or IP value into the products they're making. So when you look at the back of the bag on the ingredients, it's not just barley. There's going to be all sorts of bollocks in there. Be aware of that. Check it out. The least amount of extra crap that's in that bag, I have to imagine is better, because you don't want all the rest of it. It's one of those things that we're not going to be able to recommend specifically unless we're talking about a specific region. So
here's the other thing: in the States, craft malting is taking off, and there are craft malt houses all over the place.
Yeah,
I'd call up a craft malt house and say, "Hey, can I get like 5 pounds of barley?"
Yeah, just raw.
You know, and the other thing too is they're more than willing, because I know a bunch of malt houses. They love talking malt with people. So if you just call them up, and you can find craft malt if you go to the craft maltsters, if you're in the States, and if you go to the craft maltsters, just Google it, the Craft Maltsters Guild. You can go to their website, and all of the member malt houses are listed there. You can find your closest craft malt house and just call them up. You want to talk to them about malt, and maybe if and they'll be happy to send you with some malt, because it's cool and it's helping further the cause. But yeah, basically wherever you can get your hands on any barley, and I would say, even if you really want to get a better understanding of it, don't just stop at barley. Get different types of wheat. Get red wheat, get hard red wheat, get soft white wheat, I've malted quinoa before, back before hard seltzers were even a big deal. And just get your hands on different grains and just play around with it, because they're all going to do their own thing. Malt some rye, because here's the other thing too: when you start talking about malting other small grains, rye is going to come up, and because rye is a pain in the ass to malt. But it's so cool. It makes such a delicious malt. It's really, it's worth the effort, but you just have to, it takes skill to malt rye really well. Malted oats and malted rye, for very similar reasons. You've got very high beta glucans, arabinoxylans, pentasans. And these are all these really gummy, gooey proteins that just want to fuck you up, and you got to figure that out and figure out how to work around it. But if you can do that, man, it's really worth the effort. It makes for some really cool malt.